Mr. Maddox, I'd like to start with you. In 2000, you worked for a group called ACORN, the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. It's a left-wing organization, an advocacy group mired in scandal over allegations of election interference, embezzlement, and other illicit activities. What were your responsibilities in that role when you worked for ACORN?
Good morning, Senator. I worked for ACORN approximately 23 years ago for a couple of months, and my role was primarily focused on the membership drive, where I visited and canvassed neighborhoods in Washington, D.C., recruiting members for the organization.
Did you ever participate in ACORN's voter registration drives?
You know, Senator, looking back, I'm not sure whether there was a voter registration component to recruiting members to the organization. I think that that's possible. I don't specifically remember it. And I have to note that you mentioned the scandal earlier. It's my understanding that that scandal arose several years after my involvement in ACORN ended, and I did not witness any voter registration fraud and certainly didn't participate in any.
You were there in 2000 and left thereafter?
Correct, Senator.
Okay. Now, you stated in your bio that you'd been a member of the American Constitution Society starting in 2008. Is that correct?
As a law student, I was a member of the organization at Yale Law School. Yes, Senator.
Okay. Now, the American Constitution Society is advocating very strongly for what they characterize broadly as, quote, Supreme Court reform. If you go to the organization's website, it puts a little bit more detail on the matter. It says, quote, our Supreme Court is in a full-fledged legitimacy crisis. Put simply, we no longer have a Supreme Court that can be trusted to uphold constitutional rights, democratic principles, and judicial norms in this country. Close quote. Let's just pause right there. I've got more I want to read from that. Do you agree with that so far?
Senator, my involvement with ACS ended at the time that I graduated from law school, and I'm not aware of any positions that they've taken on this particular issue. But as a sitting judge, I'm bound to follow the precedent set by the Supreme Court, and I do so faithfully in my work, and I will continue to do so if I have the fortune of being confirmed for a district judgeship.
Do you agree with the assertion made in this statement that I just read to you?
Senator, as a sitting judge, I don't believe it would be appropriate for me to comment on that particular issue. That issue could be an issue that comes before me in my role as a judge, and I don't believe that it would be proper for me to comment on that.
Right. Well, I would certainly hope that as a sitting judge or as a judicial nominee to become a judge, you couldn't reach any comment other than to say, I disagree with it. I mean, this is calling into question the legitimacy of the court. It's saying that we no longer have a Supreme Court that can be trusted to uphold constitutional rights. Are you saying you take no position as to that and that you can't take any position as to that?
I was referring to any arguments that that organization may have to support the position that you've been describing. I can say that as a judge, I treat the Supreme Court's majority opinions as the law, as the state of the law. And I apply it in the cases where it applies. Any cases before me that come before me in my role as a judge, I apply relevant Supreme Court cases.
Why would it be asking too much for you to say, I disagree with ACS's characterization that the Supreme Court cannot be trusted to uphold constitutional rights?
I follow the Supreme Court in everything that I do, Senator. They set the Supreme law of the land, and I follow that law and apply it in my cases.
Even
as far as I'm concerned, the Supreme Court is a legitimate institution.
Okay. And an institution that can be trusted to uphold constitutional rights.
That's the institution that's charged with upholding constitutional rights, Senator, and I follow their direction.
Now, let me continue with the quote. It goes on to say, this is the result of the right packing the Supreme Court and of the court's resulting conservative supermajority being driven by a staunchly partisan agenda that is increasingly hostile to fundamental rights and judicial norms, close quote. Let's unpack that one, and let's go to the first part of that sentence. This is the result of the right packing the Supreme Court. Do you agree with that characterization? Has anyone packed the Supreme Court in your lifetime?
I understand that the Supreme Court justices have been duly appointed to those positions. They were nominated by the president at the time of their appointment, and the Senate confirmed their nominations. And that's the process that each one of those justices underwent that got them to the Supreme Court, and that is the law. That law was followed in each of those instances.
And in fact, the number of justices on the Supreme Court has not changed in over 150 years. So, do you agree with the characterization that they have packed the Supreme Court, that anyone has packed the Supreme Court in your lifetime, in the last 100 years, in the last 150 years?
Again, Senator, I'm not familiar with the positions that this organization has taken on this particular issue.
I just told you that position. They said that the court's been packed.
But I'm really not sure what they mean by packed. I think that the persons who occupy the seats on the Supreme Court currently were duly appointed to those positions.
Okay, I'm out of time. Let me just finish with one thought here. They characterized the court at the end of that sentence as, quote, increasingly hostile to fundamental rights and judicial norms. Do you agree or disagree with that statement?
I would not agree with the statement that they have been hostile to fundamental rights, Senator.
Thank you.